who could not come and join us today. Just to kind of give a little bit of introduction, I had it on the screen just a few minutes ago. So here is Miss Taylor Wheaton, and she is an ATI grad, as you can see here. Okay, she got her associate's degree from ATI in 2016, and she took my international business course, and and also my econ and sales and other classes as well. And after that, she joined this Jared Logistics Systems. And logistics is a big part of supply chains. And after that, she is working as a logistics specialist in ArcBest 3PL, that is the third-party logistics, with something called Panther Premium. That's the brand. And her role is more of a safety supervisor. So I invited her to come and talk to us about what can we expect when it comes to supply chains, or when it comes to logistics, when it comes to moving the goods and all of those things. So when you finish your associate's degree, your bachelor's degree, and you move on into your career, what type of issues you will face? And Taylor will be the excellent person to talk about it. Why? Because she has done that, okay? And she has 4 to 5 years of experience in that area. So Taylor, take it away. At the bottom, you will see a thing called share screen. Do you see the green color button that says share screen?
Yes.
So click on that, and then you can, yes, I can see your screen. That's great.
There we go.
Thank you.
All right. Am I ready to get rolling here?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So as Dr. Subu mentioned, I did graduate from the ATI. I took his business class, international business, which is actually what got me started in logistics. From there, I was required to intern, and I went over to Jarrett, which is where I started my career. So Jarrett Logistics wasn't exactly where I wanted to go as far as the beginning of my career goes, because I thought I wanted to be an international business. However, they offered me a decent position to kind of get my foot in the door, and I've learned that in any career, you have to get some kind of experience before you can move up. So I started there as an assistant logistics coordinator intern. And what Jarrett is they're the 3PL. They're the middleman. So what we did was we worked for our customer in the sense that Jarrett doesn't have their own fleet to go pick up the freight for their customer. Their customer actually called us, and then what we were required to do was get all of the information about the freight that they needed moved, and then we were required to schedule pickups and deliveries. So Jarrett actually specializes more in less than truckload, which is your LTL, truckload, and then expedite. So because they don't have their own fleet and their own assets, every time that we got an order, we had to call places such as FedEx, Holland, I'm trying to think, Yellow Freight, YRC, all of the local companies that you see on the roadway to go pick up their freight for them. And then as far as warehousing and order fulfillment goes, so what we actually did was the order fulfillment. They would call us, they'd tell us what they had, we'd go pick it up. Jarrett also offers warehousing. However, that's mainly for the company down in Oroville called Smuckers, which I'm sure you guys all have heard of. They do store a lot of Smuckers goods. They don't do that for all of their customers. They don't take in-house and store it like FedEx kind of does and kind of holds on to the freight for a little bit longer. We are literally just the people behind the computer getting things put together. Freight brokerage. So obviously, because they don't have their assets, they do have to broker their freight out. So Jarrett charges their customer a fee for us to find the truck to pick up the freight, if that makes sense. Um, and then they also have Pack Ship USA and Jarrett Fleet Services. Jarrett Fleet Services, they fix trucks, and then Pack Ship USA, they move smaller packages. So your little FedEx packages that you mail out versus the 100 and 1,000 pound pieces of freight. So Jarrett was more of a laid back company to start. I felt that had I not started there, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. They built my foundation and kind of held my hand and taught me everything that I needed to know for further down the line. So after Jarrett, sorry, that went out of order there. After Jarrett, I decided that I needed to move up. I needed something that was a little bit more fast paced, that was going to challenge me. Their job was kind of just busy work to get your foot in the door and teach you the basics. So then what I did was I interviewed at Panther Premium Logistics, which is now a service of ArcBest. We were bought out by ArcBest just over 2 years ago. And ArcBest actually has an umbrella of companies, but we'll focus mainly on Panther today. So from there, I got a job at Panther. And at Panther, I started as a logistics specialist one. There's different categories because you get bonuses based on how much that you are able to bring in as far as revenue goes. So Panther actually has assets. They have their own fleet. They have their own trucks, their own manpower to move the freight. They don't have to be like Jarrett and call somebody else to go get the freight for the customer. The customer actually, for the most part, calls us directly, and we go out there and we find one of our drivers that's willing to pick it up and take it to delivery. So what I did when I started was I literally just picked up a phone and answered emails. I would have to figure out what the freight was, how much they were going to have. I'd have to give them a quote, give them the price, make sure that their customer was okay with the amount. And then they would go back, get it approved. We would book it, and then we'd have to get out there and start looking for a truck. We also do broker some of our freight out. Sometimes we don't have trucks sitting up in Oregon or Wyoming, so we have to go ahead and find other carriers such as Tri-State. We do use FedEx Time Critical to pick up some of the shipments. But you have to remember that in this case, because we have our own assets, we have to pay more money and upcharge the customer more money in order to go out and broker that freight if we don't have a truck of our own. So at Panther, it's a lot more high speed. It's a lot more energetic. You have to be willing to kind of work really quickly, and it's really busy. There's not really time for downtime or to think about a lot of things. They kind of just take you and throw you to the wolves and say, you know what, you're going to pass or fail. And it's not really a job where they're going to sit there and hold your hand, because you got to think on your feet. You have that customer on the line right now who wants to get their freight picked up in 2 hours, and you got to figure out what you're going to do to get that covered. And then kind of what I did was I worked in logistics for 2 years, the logistics specialist position, and it kind of got a little bit boring for me. I ended up moving from booking freight and quoting freight to being our customer service specialist on our team. At Panther, we have a bunch of different teams. We have a 3PL team, a life sciences, a government, a manufacturing, an automotive. So we move freight for literally everyone. So under the 3PL division, which I worked for, I ended up becoming our customer service rep because they felt that I dealt with the customers the best, and was able to handle the high pressure situations that it put me in. I would get calls of customers screaming at me because their freight was going to be late or their freight was damaged or what have you. It didn't matter. They needed the help right now, and I had to deal with that high pressure situation. So if I were to just dial back for a second, if you want to get your feet wet in this industry and this is something that you want to do, I don't really recommend you go work for a carrier itself like Panther is, just because they throw you in and you got to figure it out. They do help you along the way a little bit, but it's just one of those. It's the kind of job where you learn something new every day. I've been in this industry for almost five-ish, 5.5 years, and I could tell you that no one day is the same as the previous one. Every single day there's something new to learn, there's something new thrown at you, and you got to figure it out. You got to think on your feet, you got to be quick. It's not really the kind of job that fits in a square. There's not a handbook that says this is what you're going to do every single day. It's here's an overview, here's a handbook of an overview of what you're going to be able to do and what you should be able to do, but that's not how it's going to work. Some days you have to really think outside of the box and figure out what you can do. So for example, when I worked in our 3PL division as a logistics specialist, I had a customer call and say, I have a letter that needs to be from Florida to Michigan in 2 days. I contacted USPS. They told me that it can't get there that quickly. I said, you know what? We can throw it in a cargo van. We can throw it in his passenger seat, and he can get up there as quickly as he possibly can. Our cargo vans can drive 16 hours at a time before they have to take a 5-hour break. So it's a little bit easier for them because they don't have to follow the DOT rules. So in that sense, we were able to get that package from Florida to Michigan in a timely manner before USPS could even get it there. So that's just a scenario of taking things and thinking about it outside the box. It's not always going to be a 100-pound piece of freight or a 1,000-pound piece of freight. It's going to be a 5-pound package that needs to get somewhere. So I worked in that role for 2 years, and then I kind of thought, I need something more that's going to give me more of a challenge. At some point, you kind of decide you need to grow yourself as a professional and you need to learn more about the industry. You're not going to do that by sitting comfy in your seat every day and doing that same job every single day. So I went ahead and I interviewed in between these two positions. I interviewed for a management position, which I did not get. However, my supervisor at the time told me that if you don't go out there and try, you're not going to know what's going to happen. You're not going to know what kind of questions you're going to be asked when you go to do a job like that. If you don't get out there and give it a try, you're not going to get there. So that interview challenged me to be better at my job, to be better at knowing what I want out of this career and where I want to go. At that point, I interviewed for the safety supervisor position in 2018. The safety supervisor position is a more laid back position. However, it has a higher gravity. When I was interviewing for it, the supervisor that interviewed me told me that I could walk into work one day and get a phone call that they ran someone over on the roadway and I would have to deal with it. That's just the kind of things that come along with the job. So, as a safety supervisor now, I handle DOT rules and regulations. I handle hazardous materials training and hazardous materials every day on the job, accidents, incidents, occupational accidents, freight claims, you name it, I have to deal with it now. So, for the hazardous materials, I actually had to go out to Oklahoma for a week and get certified by DOT. So I had to go out there and you sat in class every day on a DoD base and they taught you all about hazardous materials. And I ended up walking away with a certificate that is good for 3 years. And then I will have to go back and get recertified. So with this certificate, I have been given the ability to make decisions on hazardous material shipments. That's something that we move every single day. You'll see out on the roadway the trucks that say flammable or corrosive. Those are the things that we deal with, and those are dangerous products loaded in those trucks. On to the next thing, accidents. Like I mentioned, I have had an accident before where I had a driver call in and they told me that their co-driver was unresponsive in the cab. Those are things that you have to sit there and you have to think, okay, what do I need to do here? I need to find out what happened. I need to call 911. I need to, call the next of kin. You have to gather as much possible information as you can. So in this position specifically, it's a lot more laid back on a day to day. I just monitor our trucks, I handle hazardous shipments. But the second you get an accident call or an occupational accident call, you have to think on your feet immediately. What do you need to do here to make sure that everything is taken care of? Not only do I sit here on the phone and talk to the drivers all day, but I have to record all of this information into our system. And our system requires additional information. Sometimes we have to dispatch an adjuster, an insurance adjuster, because if you don't get all the information from the driver, you have to get it from somewhere. Someone could come after you and sue you if you rear end someone and they get injured and they don't tell you that at the scene. So, for Panther as a whole, my training as a logistics specialist, I was in training for 6 weeks when I first walked through that door and got hired in. You don't just get hired in and get thrown out on the floor, but I can assure you that our training system did not give me everything I needed in order to do my job either. And having been there for 2 years, moving into the safety supervisor position, I was also in training for another 6 weeks. So I sat in a classroom, and we actually have teachers on site at our company that you sit in there with every day and you can ask questions and they sit with you and they teach you how to do your job. But like I said, this isn't a career where every day is the same. You're not going to walk in and have a schedule and follow that every single day. That's just not the nature of the position or the nature of the industry for that matter. Next time you drive down the roadway and you see a semi on fire, you can just think about all of the things that go in behind the scenes of something like that. It's not just like, oh, the truck's on fire, we're just going to let it go and see what happens. It's, is everyone okay? Who was involved? Are the police on site? Are the firefighters there? What caught fire? How did it catch fire? What's your truck loaded with? What kind of freight is in there? If there's a hazmat freight, we have to call out a hazmat team in order to handle the spills. It's not simple. It's not an easy job. So career expectations at this company, professionalism is the number one. You have to talk to customers on the phone every single day. If you're not talking to customers, you have to talk to drivers. And in my job specifically, if you're talking to a driver, you could lose that driver if you get crappy with him on the phone and you don't treat him the way he should be treated. These drivers are the reason that we're in this job. These drivers are the reason that you eat every day. They get the food to the markets, they get the feed for your animals. It doesn't matter how you cut it. These guys are on the road every day working day in and day out to make sure that you have what you need in order to survive. We don't have a dress code at Panther, which is probably the nicest thing about it. They don't really care what you wear to work. They want you to be comfortable and come in and do your job every day. The main thing about working in logistics is, as a whole, would be teamwork. You need to be willing to work with others. You have to be willing to learn from them and listen to them. I would say that the most things that I've learned in my career, I've learned just from watching and listening. You don't get anywhere by thinking that you know everything, especially in this kind of a job. I would also say that you're going to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. I have failed many times in my career over the last 5 years, but because of the failures, I've learned from them, and it has made me into the person that I am today. 5 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys. I would have been way too afraid to do that. But this job has kind of given me some thick skin, given me the ability to step out of my comfort zone and do things that need to be done. I mean, the way that you really just have to put it, this industry isn't something that you can just walk around and hope it's going to work out for you, because you have to be a go-getter. You have to go out there and know what you want from it. And Panther, or ArcBest, I should say, is the whole company. We have a bunch of different aspects of our company. Panther itself is actually in Medina, Ohio. It's on Route 18 when you're going into Fairlawn. Then we also own ABF Freight Logistics. I'm sure you'll see our trucks out on the roadway. That's LTL, truckload, and then we handle the expedite side of things. So we're strictly expedite and truckload. We also have UPack. UPack is actually a moving company. So you actually pack all of your things into a container, and then one of our truck picks it up and takes it to your new house. I'm trying to think what else. There's so much that goes into this job on a daily basis. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. Um, freight claims that we deal with every day. We just had a freight claim a couple weeks ago. The customer was unaware of our liability and what we covered. The freight was custom windows that were going to a $6 million home in California. The truck arrived at the delivery and the windows were shattered in the back of the truck. So then you have to deal with a customer who's building a $6 million home whose windows were imported from another country that we were supposed to get to the home to be placed in, and just it didn't work out that way. So freight claims, just to give you an idea, we only pay 50 cents on a pound, whether it's new or used, so up to $50,000. So you're not getting what you paid for your freight in this case. It's kind of one of those things where it's you buy something in the mail and it comes to you and it's not how they told you, you're going to get your money back or they're going to send you a new product. When you're moving freight like this, that's not how it works. If it doesn't get to you in good condition, you're not guaranteed to get what you paid for it. Another thing I would say, DOT rules and regulations, that's been the hardest part about my job and learning my job. I have to go to their website almost daily to look things up. Our truck gets into an accident, for example. I actually had to work yesterday and we had a deer strike. The deer strike ended up ripping off the front bumper. You wouldn't know unless you looked it up, but missing part of the front bumper is actually a DOT violation. That truck was shut down and unable to drive. He had to be towed to a repair facility because DOT pulls you over. You're going to get $400, $500 fine, plus our company gets a fine for that. So everything that our drivers do, it comes back on us. It's not just they're out on the roadway doing their thing. Trying to think, do you guys have any questions from here? Dr. Subu, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so that's pretty intense, actually. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost like, I have seen some 9/11 calls.
Yes,
Shows on the TV, it sounds like that actually. Pretty intense.
absolutely.
And, you have to deal with quite a bit of people and the type of issues that they come across on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Yes, I mean, so you talked a lot about this LTL, okay? And you also said sometimes your package may be only 5 pounds. Now,
Correct.
what can you tell us about the different size packages, and how do you try to accumulate different packages so that you can try to reduce the cost and put everything in one truck? And probably this was part of your earlier job,
Hmm.
when you were actually working with the customer survey as a customer service representative. So how did that work? And also, you also kind of gave very intense things when it comes to these um, safety supervision right now. So, what are the type of insurance issues that you might have had? And
Okay.
what type of products have you moved? Just to kind of give an idea. We don't want exact names and things like that, but just an
Hmm.
overall idea.
Okay, so to roll back to the LTL side of things, since Jarrett Logistics was mainly an LTL, a truckload and an expedite, LTL is literally less than truckload. So we don't hire a truck to come out and fill the entire vehicle for a customer. The customer actually calls us and says we have one skid. So that one skid then gets dispatched to FedEx Freight. FedEx then arranges their pickups so that they fill the entire truck in one day from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Does that make sense? We don't actually purchase the whole truck. We only pay for the one skid on that truck.
Okay.
And then, whereas truckload, your customer actually pays for the entire semi load. So you you find the truck, you charge them for the entire truck, and then it goes to the shipper, and the shipper can put anything they can fit in there as long as it's not over the 43,000 gross weight. So they actually have exclusive use of that entire truck, whereas LTL is not that way. You're only paying for how many skid spots you have and how much weight you're moving. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It's skid spots. SKID skid.
Skid, like a skid, a pallet.
Okay. Good.
So one pallet is 48 by 48, and then however much you have on it, your weight could vary from 10 pounds to 3,000 pounds. It just depends on what your piece of freight actually is.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
So then as far as safety goes and Panther, our trucks are actually exclusive use. We do not do LTL specifically at Panther. So our customer actually pays for an entire truck at a time, whether they're moving one piece, three pieces, or 20 skids. It doesn't matter. They're still paying for the full truck. So in this case, we have different size vehicles. We have a cargo van, which is not regulated by DOT. It is just a smaller van that you could literally get in and drive on a daily basis. And a cargo van only fits 2 total skids and up to 3,000 pounds. Then we have a box truck, or straight truck is what we call it. And your straight truck is just a step up. These are regulated by DOT, and they generally can haul up to 10 to 12,000 pounds. I think it's usually like 8 to 10 skids is usually what it is. And then we also have the semis that they can pay for, which is up to 26 skids on the semi or 40,000 pounds. So, kind of talking a little bit more about my safety supervisor role now rather than being on the side of helping the customer, I'm more so helping the drivers and the customer if you're talking about the claims. So claims, let me think about this for a second. We move stuff for PetSmart. We move live fish for PetSmart. We had a truck actually end up rolling and splitting in half, and these fish were all over the roadway. So, I mean, when you say that people think that my job is just rainbows and butterflies, it's really not. We aren't supposed to always be moving that stuff, but we have exclusive use trucks specifically for PetSmart. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have different verticals. We have the high value product vertical who handles strictly high value product. And when it comes to the claims, they actually charge more for additional liability coverage on the freight that's in the truck. So that vertical actually gets specifics about each piece of freight that's going to be getting onto our truck, because the way that we look at it, as soon as that freight's on our truck and our driver signs that bill of lading that they picked it up, it is now our responsibility. It's not the shippers, it's not the consignees, it's our responsibility to get it there in one piece. All right, now I lost my train of thought. We got life sciences. Life sciences actually handles pharmaceuticals. They're our only division that can handle that because of the gravity of that product as well. If we move some kind of a narcotic or a drug that gets out there on the roadway and someone hijacks the truck, you're in big trouble. So those trucks specifically are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when there's freight on them. Another one of our verticals would be the government vertical. Our government vertical moves ammunition for the government. It's literally what you see in here. Um, Through this pandemic, we have actually worked for the CDC. So the CDC has had us moving products to hospitals to ensure that they had everything that they needed. When you hear about Katrina or hurricanes, anything, any natural disasters, we specifically send trucks down in order to relieve people. And so then our next vertical would be automotive. We move stuff for Nissan. Nissan is one of our biggest contracts that we move parts for specifically out of their Tennessee location. We have people stationed in Tennessee on their grounds that work for us, but they work for them. So they're hired by Panther, but they work right on the grounds. Then we have our manufacturing department. So they handle manufacturers. Bosch and Lomb is one of them. I'm trying to think about like washers and dryers that you have in your house. We work for Black and Decker. It doesn't matter who it is, you name it, we work for them. The 3PL vertical, which I was a logistics specialist in, 3PL can pretty much move anything except for the specialized products that go to each vertical. So 3PL is kind of our miscellaneous department where you get customers that don't have a specific location within our company. And then we also have an air freight division, but our air freight division isn't very, I don't want to say it's not very big, but they don't move a mass amount of stuff. Rather, they move one piece and that piece costs $55,000 to put on a plane. So it's not as big as the rest of our company. And just a little side note, which is kind of interesting for our industry, during this pandemic, we've actually had one of the most highly generated revenue years that we've had to date, which is kind of interesting because most places are failing right now and are struggling to stay afloat. And believe it or not, our company has done better than in the past, and probably because we're able to move the products for the CDC and for the hospitals and for natural disasters and things like that, that it's kind of helped our industry, and on the downside, it's hurt others. Any other questions?
Yeah, that's a very detailed answer. Thank you, Taylor. I have
You're
been typing
welcome.
a lot about that in the
Sorry
response
about
box.
that.
No, 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 no. That's really good. I mean, students are able to get a real good sense of, how these things work. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what I wanted from you, and you are actually doing the nuts and bolts of all the supply chains that we are talking about. And I wanted students to get the feel for that. And I will tell you, okay, you came to ATI to give an introduction to the incoming students. I saw you about 3-4 years ago, I think. And compared to
Mhm.
that, now you sound a lot more confident, the way how you speak. So
Mhm.
these kind of small things, you will get it only through experience. And that's exactly
Perfect.
what Taylor is saying, that you have to work. And the more you see, the more you go with it, you will learn. Actually, a couple of things that you mentioned, I totally agree. And I, in fact, typed it up in capital letters in a text box that says, teamwork is important.
Mhm.
Okay, extremely important when you are in a supply chain. For the students especially, I'm telling, it's not a one person's job. You have quite a few people involved in that, so you have to get everybody going. And that is where your interpersonal skills, your interactive skills, and your communication skills, all of them come into play. And Taylor mentioned earlier that you don't want to shout in the phone, and you may lose a driver, and you don't want that to happen, right? And it's a stressful situation. And just some of the pictures that we see on the screen right now, you can see the type of issues that we are dealing with. It's essentially life or death, and
Oh
often
yeah.
sometimes it can be death. So it can even put you under like like some kind of a pressure, mental
Oh
pressure. That's
yeah.
what I mean by that. So these things are very important. And another thing you mentioned was watching and listening. That's another important lesson that I want all the students to take in, okay? Because am I going to teach you everything in this class about food supply chains? Not at all. Okay. Whatever I taught Taylor Wheaton, okay, she'll be thinking, oh, I learned everything. And she went into the job, and in the job, it's an entirely new, different world. Okay. So
Yes.
you have to watch and you have to kind of start interacting with different people. And then the more you listen, the more open you are to the situations, you will understand the situation and you will kind of go along with it, and you will become a good supply chain professional, let's say.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I'm hearing. Taylor Wheaton does not have the word supply chain manager or anything like that, but she is a essential part of this whole supply chain thing when the things are moving along. And that's what I wanted the students to understand. And you did an amazing job, Taylor. I really appreciate that. So do you have any other slides here to go?
I
Yeah, there
do.
is something.
Yes.
So please go ahead.
All right, so tips on a successful career that I just wanted to talk about. As you could hear through my entire presentation, um, there's little things that you need to pick up on as you're moving along. So for me specifically, take electives that interest you. International business was something that didn't specifically interest me, but it piqued my interest, and I thought, you know what could it hurt to take this class to find out if this is what I want to do with my life. When I walked into the ATI, I didn't even want to go to college. My parents made me go to college, so I had to figure out what I wanted to do before I left there so I could continue my career. Other thing I said was to take steps out of your comfort zone. Doing this for me specifically is stepping out of my comfort zone. It's not something I get to do every day, but it's something I do wish I could do more. I wish people understood more about what it's like to go out into the industry and actually be faced with things. You can sit in that classroom and you can learn things, but it's nothing like what it's like once you actually get out there into the workforce. Getting a job at Panther, for example, I had to know someone to get in. I had to put this kid's name on my resume who was already hired in, and he had to give me a good word to get into the company. It's big. It's like working for Smuckers. You're not going to walk in and have one interview and they're going to say you got the job. You need to find ways to stand out and make yourself be recognized. I I have a typo here that I didn't realize to put Apple for many jobs, but I meant apply for many jobs. Um, I have even working at Panther for the last 4 years. I have applied for more jobs than I can tell you. Why? Because I got interview experience. I got the experience to walk into another company, talk to new people, find out what they do, why they do it. Is it something that I want to do? Is it not something that I want to do? Is the money good? I'll tell you that, a lot of people are like, well, I just want to make a lot of money. Well, I understand that, and everybody understands that. But if you don't love what you do every day when you walk into the office, the money doesn't mean anything. I'm not going to tell you that I love my job every single day that I walk in, but there are parts about my job that I love, and the parts that interest me are the parts that, it keeps me on my toes. I'm not going to walk in every single day and read a textbook, and this is how it's going to work. Don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to ask for help. That's one thing that when I first started in this job, I was afraid to ask for help. I was afraid to ask questions. You don't learn, you don't grow if you don't ask for help and learn from the people around you. Remember that you don't ever have everything figured out. You have to learn as you go. Don't walk in somewhere and act like you know everything. Even if you have interest in the industry and you know things from sitting in class. Like I said, let's just full circle. It's not like sitting in that chair every day and dealing with it firsthand. Build relationships. Building relationships is the biggest thing. The only reason I really got into this safety supervisor job at Panther is because I built relationships over my first 2 years of being in 3PL. I talked to the people around me. I asked for help from the teams that were around me, the safety team, specifically the claims. I really got to know the supervisor of the person that I report to now. I really got to know him when I worked in 3PL because I would ask him questions. Is this freight okay to move? Is this freight not okay to move? It's hazardous. What do I do with it? And just by building a relationship with him, it got me somewhere else in the company. So LinkedIn is another good place. I'm sure Dr. Subu has talked to you about that. LinkedIn is a good way to network. I personally have networked with people on there and I've gone for interviews just from meeting people on LinkedIn. You just never know who you're going to meet and who's going to pique your interest and what kind of job they might have open for you. Keep up with the news and trends within the industry that you're interested in. Um, Logistics is one of those that it's always changing. The trends are always changing. You have to be aware of what's going on in the world. Riots, for example, that we dealt with a lot this year, the pandemic, natural disasters. You have to know where you're sending your trucks. You have to know what you're sending them into. If I had to explain it, truck drivers are sometimes like, I don't want to offend anyone, but it's sometimes having to talk to a dog because you have to teach them. A lot of times these truck drivers don't understand what's going on in the outside world. They're in that truck, they're in there to do their job. You have to sit there and say, Mr. Lewis, you're up, you've already driven 11 hours today. And he's like, well, no, I didn't. I've driven more than that. And it's like you have to go over things over and over again. So that's kind of just how the industry works. You have to understand that everything's constantly changing, the people are constantly changing. You're going to fail. Use your failures as learning experiences. Failing is a part of becoming who you're meant to be. Is something that I've learned. I used to be terrified to fail. I used to always want to be picture perfect, and I was very OCD about making sure that I was who people wanted me to be. It's not about being who people want you to be. It's about being yourself. It's about finding yourself. And you're not going to fail. I'm sorry, you're not going to find yourself unless you fail. And remember that you'll always regret the chance you didn't take. And I say that because, like I said, I've interviewed for a lot of positions over the years, even though I'm still at my current job. If you don't go out there and try it, you're not going to know if it's made for you. You could take this class and decide that this is what you want to do, and then you get out there and it's not what you want to do. You need to get out there, you need to talk to people, you need to interact, build those relationships, and they can help guide you to figure out what's best for you. Work as a team. Don't be afraid to work as a team. Don't try to do things on your own. You have to be willing to have those around you, build you up and teach you what's right and wrong. And then any questions?
That's really good. Thank you. Now, the floor is open for questions. I already asked a couple of questions, but I want students to jump in because this is your career, this is your life. And here is Taylor, who was in your seats, literally in your seats just a few years ago. And now she is in the industry doing something in supply chains and logistics and things like that. So go ahead, ask away your questions.
I have one. When it comes to dealing with the regulations in the position you are now, with the safety and the DOT, what kind of legal things do you have to go through? Obviously, there's going to be different steps that you take when things like a truck rolls over. Do you have any hand in dealing with those?
So I don't specifically have a hand in dealing with those, but I can tell you that I work with my supervisor every day and we discuss things every day. And I've just heard like the different things that go on behind it. So for example, he has actually had to go into litigations before. We had a driver side hit another vehicle pulling out of a gas station, and the gentleman actually passed away. So our higher ups, we have a legal department at Panther. So our higher ups and my manager actually had to go into litigation with our driver who survived the accident against the person who passed away. So then what they kind of do on that side of things is they have to say, okay, what did this guy do wrong? Did he do anything wrong? We have to try to back why he did or didn't do it. We have to show, as far as the DOT regulations go, I guess hours of service is a big one. They ask for copies of our driver's hours of service because that's a legal thing. If our driver goes over the 10 or 14-hour clocks, they're in violation and that's against the law. So that would have been kind of just a little bit of a piece of information for the other family to go after us and say, well, your driver was at fault because they drove longer than they were supposed to or something like that. So I don't really have like a specific hand in it, but I can kind of just give you that little bit of an overview. It can get pretty down and dirty, and people come after us for silly things. They might get rear-ended and have a backache, and we have to go then and fight why something happened or didn't happen or what's going to make it right or wrong, or what's going to support our case in a sense. So I don't really have a full hand in that stuff, but just a little bit of an overview. Our people do get called into court for these things, and we get sued for things on almost a daily basis because we're a big company.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. When you are big, people know that you have deep pockets, so they will try to sue you. So, and
That's correct.
especially when you are moving these, hazardous materials in these big trucks
Mhm.
non-stop, and there are, hundreds and thousands of trucks traveling all around the country. So you have to figure out, where you are, how you are doing, and things like that. So having talked a little bit about the accidents and issues, what is the general mood, not just within your company, even among the people that you have interacted with outside your company, about
Mhm.
these self-driving trucks? There are lots and lots of buzz about that. Tesla is coming up with self-driving vehicles and things like that. Do you think there will be some type of potential for these self-driving trucks to come along and that will reduce the accidents? I don't know whether you are an expert in that, whether you are read about that or not, but from your perspective, what do you think about that?
Um, it's kind of hard to say. They have those new Teslas out that drive themselves, which are pretty neat. And to me, it would be kind of scary to have a self-involved truck like that where it drives itself on the roadway. Having our drivers behind the wheel is scary on a daily basis as it is. Some days I get no accidents, other days I get 10. So it's kind of one of those things where it's hit or miss. You have a real human in that seat and you're still dealing with these kind of issues and accidents. From my perspective, if you really think about it, if you don't have anybody in that truck, if something does happen, how do you collect all the information that we ask? How do you find out if 911 has been paged? How do you find out if, EMS is on the scene? How do you find out what the actual damage is? In that case, I would have to call out an insurance adjuster, and you just can't always rely on those people to do their jobs. And that I think is the hardest part about if that were to take place someday is what do you rely on at that point to get information that you need to cover yourself in the case of an accident or a claim? There's nobody physically to give you insight. There might just be a video camera in the truck that's giving you, you know what you need. But even then, how long does it take to retrieve that? The truck gets towed away, you have to send the adjuster out, the tow yard has to then get the bill paid, and then they finally give you your equipment back. You have to send someone out to relieve the video camera. It's just, to me, that's frightening. I mean, I can't think of vehicles of that size and that weight being driven without somebody behind the wheel. It just, to me, it's just not working in safety. It's not safe, plain and simple.
Yeah, that's fine. That's the thing. These are the type of issues that we are all dealing with, and I just wanted to bring it up. I'm not trying to give anybody a clear answer or anything because I'm not an expert in that myself. I'm just, expert in kind of pulling the information together and giving it to the students. That's what we are trying to do. So other questions from the students, please.
I have another one.
Go ahead.
When it comes to the DOT and things like that, obviously you're moving trucks across the country to different states. What new regulations, like every 3 years you mentioned, you do have to get updated on the regulations and things like that and do class work. But do you guys have like weekly meetings or something where you're going over like new COVID regulations that you have to meet, because that is just the new time we live in, I guess?
Mhm. So we actually don't. We used to have more meetings when we were in the office. It's kind of hard now because some of us are at home and some of us are back in the office, but they can't house off all of us. Our company does send out what are called safety focus emails. Those go out almost every Monday or so, which gives not only us, but the drivers also an overview of what's coming, what's up and coming, and kind of what's expected of them. Um, to go along with that, as far as like you said with the DOT regulations, I, I didn't even really get trained on the DOT regulations when I got hired in as this position. I was given a website, and the website has everything on it. and you're kind of just expected to look things up. If you can't find it or you don't know the information, then you can ask someone else. But there really isn't something where we sit down every week and talk about the changes. The only thing that I will say is that when the pandemic did start, we did have a team meeting about moving things for the CDC because we had trucks moving things for the CDC. They were allowed to drive longer hours. So rather than stopping at an 11-hour drive clock, they were given 15. So then in that case, those drivers had to be under a specific requirement in our system to show that they were eligible to go over their time because they were hauling a CDC shipment. And with that, just like anything, they had to have paperwork in their truck to prove it to the DOT officers. But as far as like weekly meetings go, I will say that I've tried to push for more information with my company and my supervisor as a whole. I know he's busy, but we don't really have group meetings like that. We just kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and then we see the emails that come out directly from the company about every week or so.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point about COVID-19 affecting the way how we do business in our day-to-day lives. We are all sitting in our living rooms, in my case, it's a bedroom, so, and office rooms, and we are trying to work from homes, and we are trying to communicate with others, and that has really changed. And that's a real big part of the risk that you are facing, and this risk, and this is what we call an external risk. You cannot control it yourself. It is happening all around the world, and it's going to affect you. And this is affecting supply chains, and it has affected restaurants and other businesses in a negative manner, because they were forced to close, whereas, as Taylor mentioned, some other businesses have flourished because this risk has increased the business for them. Whenever I drive on Highway 30, I frequently drive to go to work and come back. Whenever I drive there, the number of trucks on the road kind of indicates the level of the economic activity in the country. You would be so surprised whenever people are saying, oh, economy is picking up. On the Highway 30, there will be a lot of trucks traveling. And they say, the economy is down, people are all losing jobs. Immediately, you can see that there are not many trucks on Highway 30. So the trucking industry is a real good indication of how the economy is doing. Mm-hmm. And, actually, Taylor is actually sitting in the front seats and coordinating the trucking industry. And right now it is more along the safety lines. And, that's really good to know. Thank you very much for, sharing that type of information. And one another thing, Taylor kind of hinted at that. And, she also talked about it a couple of times. That is, you are on your own. They give you a lot of information. They give you tons and tons of websites and data now, or information on how to work, but you have to work. You have to educate yourself. You have to keep reading over and over again. I just briefly want to share, my screen so that students have an understanding of, what I was trying to do in this class. For instance, right now, we did quite a bit of current news comprehension questions in this course, okay, where we talked about, what is happening in the world of food, let us say, or what are some of the issues that you face. Sustainability, that is, your actions, how will it affect the society? How will it affect the environment? Global supply chains, Taylor touched upon that as well. And transport in supply chains, that's exactly what Taylor is involved in. Last mile problem, maybe I can stop here briefly and ask Taylor about, what do you understand about this last mile issues? How difficult it is for you, in terms of cost, maybe you may not be directly looking at the cost yourself, how much it costs, or what are the things that you normally do to reduce costs for the customer so that you can charge less. Can you give some indications of, what are the things that Panther would do or your competitors would do to reduce costs?
Honestly, I wouldn't say that they really do when it comes to the customer. Unfortunately, this is an industry where, like you said, it's supply and demand. However, one thing that I can give you that, say we're picking up a shipment in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta is a hot place. We generally have probably 15 to 20 trucks waiting for a load. So in that case, we don't have to charge the customer quite as much because we need to get trucks moving out of there. Whereas if you're picking up a load in Wyoming, we never have trucks sitting in Wyoming. So you're going to have to charge a little bit more in order to find somebody to deadhead out there in order to pick up the freight, if that makes sense.
Okay,
That's
so
kind of like the only way that we can really cut costs.
okay, so cutting costs, again, it's like dynamic pricing. According to the type of destination or origin, you will be charging different prices. So that is something
Mhm.
for the students to know as well. So then some other topics. So the point I am trying to make here is, hey, all the reading assignments that I gave you, okay, all the videos that I gave you to watch. Why? For two reasons. One, I am not in front of you right now because of COVID. So you have to learn these concepts and you have to learn on your own, and the videos and the articles can be very useful. That's number one. Number two is reading is important. That's exactly what Taylor mentioned. You have to educate yourself about what is happening outside your industry or what is happening in the general world and how it can affect your operations, something like that. Okay.
Not
And
to cut in, but I just want to give you an example really quick of a time when I first started in 3PL working for Panther. I booked a shipment going out to Delaware. I did not keep up on the reading, and I did not know that a major snowstorm was hitting Delaware. I walked into work the next day and they could not get that shipment covered, and I got reamed because it was my responsibility to make sure that I know that things like that are going on in the world. And sure, our company will send out updates on weather and stuff and let you know, but you have to be aware of what's happening on a day-to-day basis. They don't have somebody to sit there and send out updates to you every day, every hour of the day. So that's something where I made a major mistake because we couldn't get it covered since Delaware was getting 6 feet of snow. So then we lost that freight and we lost that money, and that's just kind of how it works.
yeah, that's a really good point. Failures. Taylor talked about failures as well. You will fail. And I'm sorry to tell, but I have failed a lot. When I started teaching in ATI, my reviews from students were horrible, actually. I don't want to show it to anybody. So that's a part of your life. Okay. Failures, in fact, fail soon. The sooner you fail, the more you will learn. Okay, that's an important thing as well. So just other questions from the students. We just have about 3 minutes, and I believe Taylor has to work after this, right?
I
Her
do. I
shift is
start it too.
okay,
Yep.
yeah. So maybe we have to be respectful of her time so that she can go and may save lives, literally save lives. So questions from students, please.
Yeah, I had a question. It's kind of related to what Megan said. With the different goods, like you said, with the transporting of ammo or the CDC or humanitarian things, is there different regulations or extra training that the drivers have to do for that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah, so our government shipments, we actually have specified DoD drivers, is what we call them. And I actually had to get certified for that as well in order to get into the shipments because it's very confidential stuff. And they actually have to go through an extensive government background check. They have to get their prints run. They can't have anything on their record. I went through it myself. I had to go through and fill out over 150 pages and sign my life away, basically, in order to be certified. So the DoD shipments are a pretty big deal. Moving stuff for the government is a pretty big deal. As far as our life sciences goes, they don't really have a whole lot. So the pharmaceuticals, other than they have temp control units, and they're the only trucks in our fleet that have temp control units. So they kind of move the pharmaceuticals as well as some food stuff, but we're not really a food grade company. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that pretty much answers it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, security clearances are pretty big. Okay, I can imagine that. So that's good. So any other questions? It's your opportunity. And I mean, you can always connect with Taylor on LinkedIn, and I will probably share her email ID as well. I don't remember if I have that or not, but that will be very useful too. I have one question. I understand that you are, dealing with these safeties and accidents and things like that right now. Now, do you also get, or in your previous position as a logistics provider, or providing service for those customers, do you get some type of demand forecasts? like, hey, you know what, there's going to be a lot more demand from there. I mean, obviously right now from CDC, the demand has gone up, whereas some other demands have gone down. So do you get like weekly reports, and do you interact with the people that provide those type of reports? Do you get it through email? Whether email is the primary means of communication within your organization, or how frequently do you interact with the higher ups, like the vice presidents and other people within your organization? What can you tell us about where the future is for Panther? It all depends on the forecasting of demand.
So as far as like the demand goes, they don't really send out emails because we can't really tell all the time. But for example, like this year, wood has been a very in high demand because people are building houses right now and they're moving, and that's something we weren't really able to account for with our flatbed team. As far as interacting with other people in the office, I would say when we were actually in the office prior to all of this pandemic stuff, our higher ups, our vice president and our president actually walked around on the floor on a daily basis. And he calls me trouble because he knows I like to shut trucks down, but he walks around and he interacts with us almost daily. So it's pretty neat to be able to interact with those people. They don't just sit behind a door in an office. You actually be able to talk to them face to face and build that relationship as well. So a little bit of everything, but we don't, we do interact with our higher ups, but we don't really get much as far as forecasting goes. It just kind of gets thrown in your lap and you got to deal with it.
That's fine. That's fine. Different responsibilities for different people. So that's perfectly fine. And that's another nice thing where you are able to interact with the president of your company or VP of your safety operations, so that you have that one-on-one interaction with them. So you pick their brain and you also get into their good books and hopefully in the good books, so that you kind of and improve your understanding of your whole company and then contribute to the company operations as well. These are all really wonderful lessons, because these are the nuts and bolts of your day-to-day operations while you are working in supply chains. And she kind of touched upon quite a bit of information, quite a bit of things that happen. And also she gave very useful tips such as teamwork, communication skills, reading skills, comprehension, and quite a few things. Okay, thank you very much, Taylor. I really appreciate, this is great. Thank you very much. And I'm really glad that my students are actually gaining more experience in the jobs that I can just invite them to be the invited speakers in my class. And I had one in my sales class like last Friday, and today you are the other student speaker or previous student speaker in my class. So, I'm really glad that you are able to do that. So thank you very much, and I will be in touch via LinkedIn, and hopefully you will come and talk to us, and hopefully the times will allow you to come to our class in person down the road.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, and if anybody has any questions, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you guys can find me, feel free to ask questions. I'm out here every day in the industry, so anything you need, hey, if you need a reference at Panther or something like that, you guys just let me know. I can tell you who to contact, okay?
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate. Students, maybe this is the time for you to show all your thumbs up, okay? I have been doing that for a while now, so maybe you can thank her for her time and do things, okay? Hopefully, down the road, you will be able to, get into this type of a position or, some other position within the supply chains. And Taylor can be a good resource there, okay? So thank you very much. Everybody is welcome to log out, okay? Thank you, Taylor.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye. Jeff, Brooke, any questions? Brooke? Okay, I'm going to cut it off.